What is going on, y'all? Gamers Goon here today with your Big Ten tournament predictions. We got the bracket in front of us. We will be doing a few different conferences, the meaningful conferences at least. So we'll definitely do the SEC, and I'll pick and choose some of the other big conferences. We're not going to necessarily talk about conferences that we know, like, hey, Gonzaga is going to run through this. We're going to talk about the big conferences where there's big teams all fighting for a top spot in March Madness, but more importantly, a conference championship such as this Big Ten one. So we are going to come in here. We are going to fill them all out. We're going to do text boxes that are going to need to be a lot bigger than that. And we're going to need it to be... We're going to need it to be a color that stands out. Let's go with red. But first, we're gonna go down the left-hand side. Obviously, that's where you start. I know Indiana, Oregon do have a game. It's technically top of the table, or at least what we're looking at right now. We're not going to talk about them until the start of next round. Northwestern versus Minnesota. Northwestern, a team that I'm kind of shocked even qualified to even be here. So Minnesota, we're going to have Minnesota winning the first round game. Minnesota, Dawson Garcia, pretty much the two that you got to worry, not the two, but Dawson Garcia, pretty much the guy you got to worry about there with Minnesota. Other than him, not too much to really talk about. Northwestern. I do like Martinelli for them. Maybe they can go on a little bit of a run. He gave some problems to a few different teams this year, but really not too impressed with not with Northwestern. I am impressed with Martinelli, but not Northwestern. Then we get to Iowa versus Ohio State. Peyton Sanford, the leader for Iowa. Ohio State, a pretty solid team this year. They're a team that right now, as it sits, would be a quad one victory for a lot of these teams still remaining that are looking for a quad one victory. So you're talking about the Oregons, maybe the Indianas, Illinois, Rutgers, teams that you're looking for another boost to your resume. You want to beat an Ohio State. They're a quad one, pretty good team this year. I'm going with Ohio State. They're a dangerous team. They're not the best team in the Big Ten, obviously, coming in at 10th, but don't let that 10 fool you. They are pretty solid for a 10 seed in the tournament. USC versus Rutgers. USC shocked me by beating Illinois earlier this season. I don't think USC is all that good personally. Rutgers, they have two stars to look at. As of right now, it doesn't look like they will be a March Madness team. Give me Rutgers to win, and we're going to get to see just a little bit more out of Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper before they do leave to the NBA in the lottery next year. Then we are going to go to round number two. We're going to get up here. Oregon versus Indiana. Indiana, I don't think they're that great this year, to be honest with you. Oumar Ballo can be a guy to give Oregon some problems. The way Biddle's been playing recently, hard to contain Biddle, playing some of the best basketball in the Big Ten right now. A finalist for the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar Award, or at least he was in the top 5, I think, finalists for that award. Biddle's playing great basketball. Oumar Ballo, a guy that can pose some problems, throwing around some weight there. Recently, Luke Goody's been getting hot for him. Kind of, if they can get him as that third, fourth scorer going, Indiana might stand a chance. But for me, Oregon is just playing too good a basketball right now. We saw them almost blow a lead yesterday. Well, we saw them almost lose yesterday to Washington. Very bad Washington team. Rivalry game, though. Oregon was able to come out on top in that one, however. So that puts them up against Michigan State. That'll be a fun one. Minnesota versus Wisconsin. We kind of talked about Dawson Garcia a little bit. We'll talk about him for some more. Wisconsin, I completely don't buy anything with Wisconsin this year. Not to say Minnesota's great or anything. They're a solid team. They've had some solid wins. Wisconsin is a team right now that I think looks very beatable. A team right now that, realistically, any other year, they're not a 5 seed in the Big Ten. They're winning games, but they just don't look good. Then they run into teams like Minnesota that can pull up upsets. Wisconsin, just a team that has been on the right side of some games here earlier in the season. Not a team that I think is going to make too much noise in March. Minnesota, I have them beating them. And we have the winner of Ohio State versus Illinois going on to play UCLA. I am going to have to represent Illinois in this game. I've been saying it with Illinois for quite some time now. I think the highs are very high, the lows are very low. They are an epitome of a March Madness team. They are the epitome of a all-or-nothing kind of team. Illinois is the kind of team that can come in and lose in the first round and nobody bats an eye, or they could be the kind of team to go make an Elite 8 Final Four run and nobody bats an eye. A lot of high highs, a lot of low lows with Illinois. If they are continuing their recent success of beating Purdue, beating Michigan, doing things where we know Illinois is capable, staying away from the 3, they beat Ohio State, they should have no problem. Now, the problem comes, does Illinois allow themselves to fall into this false sense? Hey, we're gonna shoot threes. We're gonna go away from Ivicic. We're gonna settle at times. If they do that, Ohio State could easily win the game. That's why Illinois scares me. And this is interesting because Oregon and Illinois, obviously you guys know, are my two teams. Graduating from Oregon and living in Illinois. Those are my two teams, but both of them are teams with high highs and pretty low lows, so they do scare me a little bit. Then Rutgers versus Purdue. I don't think this Purdue team is that good. Are they good enough to beat Rutgers? Probably. You're talking about Trey Kaufman-Renn. You're talking about Braden Smith, two guys that have been there, done that. They were on that team last year that went to the national championship. I expect them to be able to get the job done against Rutgers, but Rutgers is a sneaky team. They if you get Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey hot, they can upset somebody like Purdue. Then we are going to head over here to the big dance, where it's going to be is this the semifinals? I think this is the semifinals. Yeah, we're heading to the semifinals. Oregon versus Michigan State. Michigan State, obviously, number 1 seed in this whole thing. They are the most consistent of the group. When it comes to these Big Ten teams, you're talking a lot about Jace Richardson here. Cohen Carr's been really, really good for them this year. Kohler's been solid for them in the games I've seen out of them. They're just a team that, realistically, they're going to be tough to beat. They got a bunch of weapons to use against you. A team that you're going to need to be hot from the field. Oregon, a team that can get hot if they can get Biddle and guys like that going. Maybe Jackson Shelstad with a big game. We got to see what a hot Oregon team looked like last year in the Pac-12 tournament, winning it all under the backs of Infaladante and Jermaine Couisnard, neither of which are still with Oregon. So now you're looking towards perhaps Biddle and Shelstad doing that for Oregon. Maybe some TJ Bamba sprinkled in there. Haven't seen much out of Brandon Angel recently. Keyshawn Barthelemy, somebody I want you guys to pay close attention to in this tournament and March Madness, because I think he's been playing some of the best basketball on Oregon. Not a name that's going to get a lot of love because he is a guy that started off the season coming off the bench, and now he's kind of carved a spot for himself in the starting lineup. He still comes off the bench every now and then, but a guy that's been shooting the ball really, really well. And then you got Kwame Evans, another guy that I'm really high on defensively. Stopped great Ozabar yesterday from getting that final bucket. It eventually sent it to overtime. Great defense there. The offensive game came along well there with Kwame shooting the 3 ball a little bit better than he was last year. A lot of high points on Oregon. The problem is, do you go to those moments where you're not getting much going? And if that's the case, you don't beat Michigan State. I'm taking Michigan State to win. I just think Oregon has an uphill battle to fight. Let's move that over. We're going to move that over right there. And we got Minnesota versus UCLA. UCLA, not a team I really think is that great this year. But Minnesota, also a team that I know I've talked them up a little bit. Dawson Garcia. That's not doing them justice. They have a few other guys that are pretty solid, but not a team that I really expect to make too much noise. But if you get past that round one, Wisconsin, very favorable matchup. UCLA, in all honesty, is also a favorable matchup. If I were to pick one of the teams with a bye, like that is their first game is on Friday that I'd run into, I want to run into UCLA or Michigan. I don't believe too much in either of them. I think both of them are beatable on the right day. So I'm taking UCLA to win, but Minnesota definitely stands a strong chance at that game. Then we go to Ohio State versus Illinois. Illinois versus Maryland. That's a little trickier. Earlier in the season, not a fully healthy Illinois looked terrible against Maryland. No answers to Derek Queen and company. Maryland, solid team this year. Illinois, obviously, you want to find one of those peaks if they are going to go on a run. I just don't see it happening here against Maryland. Illinois seems to struggle with the teams that have a big that's a little more physical. If Derek Queen can go in there and establish himself early, I think that might give some problems to Illinois. So I do have Maryland coming out on top. Then we have Purdue versus Michigan. Both teams, like I've told you already, Purdue, not super high on. But Michigan, them as a 3 is ridiculous. I know they won games, but they are not good. They constantly let teams in games. This is going to be Purdue. Michigan, you're looking for Danny Wolf. You're looking for Vlad Golden. I was going to say his full name, but I don't know how to pronounce it. You're looking for Vlad Golden. Really good coach at Michigan there. The former FAU coach. He flipped it around real quickly at Michigan. I just don't think they really have the talent, though, on that team to really pose much of a threat against Purdue, who they're going to throw Kaufman right at you, and they're going to throw Braden Smith at you, and then it's going to be the other guys. Can you stop the Foster lawyers? Can you stop whomever, right? So Purdue, I just think, have a little bit too much firepower. Not a team with a lot of firepower, in my opinion, but a little too much for a team like Michigan, who I haven't been too impressed with, even despite their record. And then we're going to come over here to MSU versus UCLA. MSU, we've already talked about them a little bit. UCLA, I think the guy's name on UCLA, the big that I like, is Bilodeau. I don't know if I pronounce that name correctly, but I've seen a few of the UCLA games. The big guy, he can stretch the floor a little bit. I do like him. UCLA obviously has a plethora of guards that they can throw at you, but MSU really, to me, is the team to beat. I know they're the number 1 seed, but they are the team to beat. They're just too consistent, and you're looking at a team in UCLA that I don't necessarily think their peak is that great. So you're looking for them to peak, but is their peak better enough than MSU's floor? I don't know. And then we are going to wrap it up here in terms of the teams that go to the championship with Maryland-Purdue. This one's fun. This one will be fun. Maryland, obviously, we like Maryland. Well, we don't like Maryland, but I like them in terms of I think they can do some things in March. Purdue, a team I haven't been super high on, but they do have those 2 guys that have been there, done that. Very big pieces of the program. They have Foster Loyer there as well. Maryland, though, is my team here. Not my team, but the team that I think is going to make a run here in the Big Ten tournament as the 2 seed. So we get a very chalky 1v2 matchup. But the good news for you is we are going to put the winner down here. We're going to have Maryland beating Michigan State here in the Big Ten tournament. That is where my bracket lies. Let me know down below who you think is going to win the Big Ten tournament. I'm rooting for Oregon and Illinois to maybe... exceed some expectations here with me, but I don't really see it happening, unfortunately. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I will see you all in the next video, which is probably going to be the SEC. Thank you for watching.